creatives, it's Danielle, and welcome to The Creative Block, a podcast made for the creatively curious who want to hear advice and experience from one creative to another in order to break your creative block. In today's episode, I really don't know what we're going to talk about, but I found a few subreddits that I would love to share with you guys, and then also my reaction to them. I found this subreddit that it's called Artist Lounge, and there's a thread on there that I just want to read to you guys. It's titled, "I'm afraid of being original and it's holding me back." And that's something that I know I've experienced a lot. So, this person says, anytime I see something similar to what I want to do, I get afraid and anytime I see something similar to what I do, I get afraid and don't want to be seen as a copier. I also know some creatives who make simple crafts that are basically putting items together that are pre-made and making a living from it. I'm sorry, I can't read today. And I love that process very much. But I feel afraid of doing it too because I feel like I'm supposed to be handcraft each piece, like reinventing the wheel. I'm also afraid to depict something I've seen before. I see so many artists draw and paint the same stuff, and it's not that I don't like it. I like to depict some of the things too, but I feel like I wouldn't be original, or like someone will say, that reminds me of so-and-so's work. Totally get that. That has happened to me once. Someone blasted me on a post saying it looked suspiciously like another artist's painting. It's happened to me too, and yet I'd never seen the artist's painting in my life, and as a matter of fact, my painting was totally winged. Been there. This sounds like a situation I had about 2 years ago where I made this character, and I'd only played the demo of Destiny, and I didn't really follow any of the fan art pages or anything like that, but I made a space character that was like a gunslinger type, and I made it, never seen anything like it before, and someone said, hey, that looks just like this character in Destiny, and I was just like, oh, you know, I've never seen that before. Honestly, never saw it before. And it's a bit degrading whenever someone that says that, whenever you think that you did something totally out of your head and out of your heart, and you think that it's just you and that there's no one else that's done something like it. And then someone says that, and it's very, very disheartening. Anyway, back to the post. I never came up with a concept. I painted what I saw or thought of it midway. It was one of those. That interaction didn't help. I know I have to be holding myself back. If I see something I'd like to do, painting, drawing, or craft, I hold back because I feel like someone's already doing it, and so I can't. And I don't want my work to look like anyone else's. Is this unreasonable to feel? Well, no, it's not unreasonable to feel, because that is a very true thing, and the way I feel like in today's world, just because of how long our culture has been around and how long people have been creating stuff, how many artisans there's been throughout history, I do really agree with what this person says towards that prompt. They say, first, originality is an illusion. Nothing is really new. It's just a fusion of pre-invented ideas we might or might not have seen before. And I think that's very true. I don't think that it's possible to be, well, I think that you can be original, but as far as your own artwork and what you put out, I don't think that it could be totally, I think everyone's going to look at your artwork, no matter what it is, and they're probably going to think, oh, that looks like this. If they say that, then you should probably have a talk with them saying, hey, I understand that you're being honest, but please understand that it's kind of like a touchy thing with me, because I know I had a really, really horrible experience. Someone wanted me to put them into a game universe. They wanted me to put them into, was it Dead Space, I think? One of those like horror space games, and they wanted me to like make them as a character into it. And so I was just like, okay, so get the suit, get your face, put it together, right? And I asked them, is that what you want? And they were like, yeah. So I did that, And then whenever I showed it to them, they were pretty disgusted by it, and they were just like, why would you just copy someone else's work? And I'm just thinking, you told me that you wanted the exact same suit that they wear in that game, and that you want your face exactly on it, and the fact that I was able to get your face pretty spot on is pretty remarkable, because portraits are hard. If you've ever done a portrait of someone, like a life portrait of someone, it's hard. And it was a really big smack in the face for them to ask for that and then immediately turn around once I showed it to them and say, I don't like that because it looks like you totally just stole their work. Yes, it's just one of those things that you ask me to do an exact replica of that with just your face on it, you know? And so I don't think people who are not artists, if that makes sense, I don't think that they can understand, and they can be empathetic, and I'm not saying that that's not possible. What I'm saying is that it's not the same for them, because they may be thinking, oh, I want this thing and I'll totally get it in your style, but if they tell you I want it exactly like this, then they should expect exactly like that, and they get offended, which I find hilarious, to be honest. They get offended that what you did is a copy whenever they ask for a copy. And that happens a lot. So I totally get where this person's coming from with being afraid of not being original. Because I know that happened to me a lot whenever I was doing like tattoo work, especially because the different, if you don't know, tattooists are pretty remarkable, because there are so many different styles out there, and the fact that you can have so many styles just to draw like one subject, like, you know, you see like the roses in the knife, that's very, I don't know where that originated from, but I see it a lot with like traditional American tattoo. And you can just take that, like just the rose with the knife going through, and you can draw it in about 10 different tattoo art styles, and it'll look completely different all the way through. And I think that's a lot like with what this person is struggling with, of being afraid of not being original, because, I mean, you can only create what you create, and if it looks like someone else's work, then it looks like someone else's work. Even though you may not have looked at that other person's work. Because it's, I don't know how to explain this. Next question. Ooh, this is a fun question. Let's read it. You ready? Question is, do you find making art fun or enjoyable? The innate answer is yes. But let's dive in. What are they really asking? So they were saying, I just want to mention I'm not an artist. Okay, thank you for being honest. I used to draw when I was little. Parents put me through a bunch of art classes. I never actually got good or developed my own style, but I don't anymore. I just wanted the opinion of actual artists. Thank you for the honesty. So the question is basically in the title. Do you actually have fun when you draw or create things? Do you enjoy being an artist? Do you have fun studying anatomy, color with a U, lighting, and shapes in order to improve your skills? I find art, as anyone who has ever seen me draw, or anyone that even remotely knows me, I get a kick out of it. I love drawing. I love painting. I love doing all the other stuff. And I would love to hear the opinion of other artists on this question, if they find making art fun and enjoyable. And I think it's a very valid question, because part of being an artist, if you really want to be an artist, is improving your skill, which I just touched on. And I think for sometimes, in order to improve your skill, you have to do what's called deliberate practice, which is, so hands are really horrible, so, meaning like they're really tough to get right, so you want to get better at hands. Well, it's not fun if you suck at hands, if you suck at drawing hands, to sit there and have to draw hand over hand over hand over hand over hand, and they all look horrible because you're not good at it. And it's one of those things that you really have to practice in order to get good at. And there are other subjects, like flowers, animals, weapons, if you want to do weapon concepts or anything like that. And that can get really, really tiring, but I still find it fun. I think that's really good. So there's a comment on this thread, and it says that they do find it enjoyable, and that the weird thing is that it makes you very stressed, but you cannot live without it. The process is a struggle, but also some sort of meditation, and then seeing the final result become alive puts a smile on their face. Now, my enjoyment in the project depends on the subject. Some commissions are just boring, especially whenever there isn't anything challenging about them. The process can still be a meditation, but I'm not as hyped for the results. I think that's very, very true and similar to me. Because I know whenever I draw or anything art related, I like to just put the headphones on and blast music into my ears for about 8 hours straight. And because of that, and because of my military time, I'm probably going to have no hearing by the time I'm 30. For me, the only time I really don't enjoy it is if I'm working for a client or for a commission and they pretty much cut out any means to be creative with it. Like if they want an exact copy and paste of something, or something else I really don't enjoy doing. I don't enjoy doing any sort of religious scripture type work, if that makes sense. Just because there are so many already made things out there, and oftentimes they just want me to type up, they don't want me to draw it out or write it out. They want me to type up what the scripture is and then just put clouds in the background. And to me, that's very boring. I know I actually have fun whenever I create things. As for being an artist, I think it's the funnest thing in the world because it gives me an excuse to do obscene and eccentric things. That sounded really bad, but I'm growing out dreads right now, and I feel like being an artist and people knowing that I'm an artist, they see that and they're just like, oh, it's just Dani, she's just doing her thing. Or whenever I color my hair, I know I know my grandma absolutely does not like my green hair. Whenever she first saw me, she was just like, why green? And then she immediately followed up with oh, you're an artist, it's expected. And I think that's one of the funnest things about being an artist, is people just assume you're weird, and they assume that you're going to do weird things. And I kind of use it as an asset, because whenever, especially with my college classes, whenever there's a problem, if there's a overarching prompt that suggests a problem and requires creative and critical thinking, I think being an artist really, really helps with that. Just because artists, we all know it, we see things differently, and every artist sees things differently, just like every human sees things differently. But artists really take that and go off the deep end. And I think it's great because it also puts you in the mindset that being an artist, it's very, very hard to reject what other people say, so it also leads to you being open-minded. So I think that there are some significant strengths in being an artist, and I enjoy it. The only thing I don't enjoy is when people want to pay me with exposure, or whenever they discredit me. It's happened a few times before, even this year, in 2020, if you can imagine it, where I'll say something and it's not textbook, it's not a kind of discredited in that regard, where people say, well, they hear that and it's just like, well, you're an artist. That doesn't make any sense. That won't work. It's too crazy, you know? And I think that happens too. I think that and people thinking that exposure is an actual valid form of payment, which is crazy. Exposure is going to be next week's topic. I think those are the only two things that are the downside of being an artist. That and all your disposable income goes towards art supplies. So if you have a sibling's birthday coming up, you're just like, huh, sorry, had to get a canvas. You know, things like that. Or you want to go out to dinner and you can't because you just dropped $50 on markers. That happens too. Alright, so this Redditor asks, ways to get your mojo back. So, they say, so I've always loved to design and draw characters and make them act, and I've always wanted to work in animation somewhere in the character art field. Lately, though, it's almost like I don't find that passion in my work anymore. My characters look bland, and my creativity feels gone. I've been drawing just what I see, because what comes out of my head, I don't love it much. That's happened. Weirdly enough, for animations, it's a completely different deal. For as bland as the design might be, or boring the action, I love tweaking it and changing the rhythm, and I've always loved the result in me creating movement. I look at others' character art and illustrations, though, and I love it so much. And so I don't think I fell out of love with the subject, per se. So what I've decided to begin doing today, taking drawings from pros that I love and breaking them down, studying them, and redrawing them, obviously just for myself, not for sharing or tracing or anything. I hope this way to get a bit into their head and maybe get back in the mindset I had when I loved creating people so much. I've been into my schoolwork so much that I'm hoping this rut is due to me not putting my head in my art. Although I did used to be able to come up with some cool stuff in my mindless drawings as well. I don't know. Have you gone through something similar? Did you get out of it or just change paths? I think that's a very real thing, especially if you're going to college or just through even like regular school. To answer, ways to get your mojo back. That is a very, very real thing, especially whenever you are so mentally drained from, like whether it's like school or actual work, if you're not like a professional artist or anything. You could do something I know that I did, because I had this really, really, really bad last year where I just wasn't feeling it. I was a semester of college. I've been going to college straight for a year. Hadn't taken a semester off yet. Straight, no breaks or anything like that. And schoolwork was mentally exhausting. At the same time, everything was just focused on school, and I was doing as best of a job that I could, keeping my grades up and everything. And I remember I had sat down one night to draw because I hadn't drawn in like 2 months, and I just couldn't. I couldn't think of anything to draw. I started drawing a few things, and I was just like, I'm not really into it. I can't really think of anything. Nothing looked good. It was all just a bunch of doodles. And my doodles are not like those cutesy little things. They're like scratches, and it looks like someone just like took graphite and just went. I started looking at different art books, and I started watching a few streams. I also had never watched reaction channels at all, and my boyfriend got me into reaction channels. And that watching the things that they were reacting to, because it was the first time I'd ever seen Off Topic from a Rooster Teeth, which you should totally watch it. It's hilarious and awesome. I don't know if they're doing it still from the virus. I haven't been keeping up. Oh, they are? Awesome. Check out Rooster Teeth Off Topic. It's awesome. They usually run anywhere from like, an hour to 3 hours long. And it's just like some Rooster Teeth guys and gals sitting around a table just talking. And anyway, so watching that for the first time and just hearing like all the crazy stuff that they were talking about, and they were just jumping from one subject to the other subject as it is, off topic, and something that sparked an idea in my head, and I kind of slept on it, and I had this idea going of wanting to draw something, and I kept thinking on it and thinking on it and thinking on it until I pretty much like all I could do. So I kept thinking about that idea until all I could do was just draw it. So it's kind of like whenever you have like a really bad craving for like some sort of food and you ignore it, and but you're still thinking about it, and like a few days pass and you're still having that craving, and you're just like, I just need this. And so essentially that's what I did with this idea, and that helped me get back into it, because once I sat down and drew that character, I went on about like a week-long bender of nothing but drawing characters, all having to do with this, and I actually created like this little story that was for it was like medieval vampire lore, no, steampunk is what it was, and I ended up making about like six characters, and I did research on it on Crowley and everything, because it started with him, and I made like an entire like story arc and clans within it, and like an entire like world. I pretty much world built for like. So I went on about a week tangent of that. Something else that might work that I've also done before is where you just kind of like switch up your styles and kind of just relearn. Like I know for me, before I really took a head dive into character concepts, I was doing a lot of tattoo art, and for that, anytime that I had like a creative block, something I would do is I would find someone else's style, or like a tattooist that I follow. Like I would do that, or I would also, my guilty pleasure. I used to watch Ink Master a lot. So much good talent on that show. But seeing different styles, especially because for that show they force the artists to draw in a specific style every week, and that really inspired me for any time I had a creative block. So you could try looking up other artists and just kind of tweaking your style, or drawing the same thing that you did draw, but doing it in a different style. Because I think something that's underrated is styles have their own art forms, and they also have their own personalities. And so whenever you draw in a specific style, you're kind of bowing down to that personality of that style. And what I mean, like, let me show you some examples. So, what happened to that? So, one example, I was doing more comic booky stuff, so I wanted something that was a little bit bold. I wanted something that was a little bit bold and also a little bit robotic. And from doing that, I came up with this guy. Ooh, can you see it? Okay. So came up with that guy. And just drawing in that style, it caused me to do, like, if you can see, I did different line weights, which I used to not do, and then it also affected how I colored him, as well as like some of his parts, like the metal bits on his boots, and like his very Mad Max sort of like haircut thing up there. So that was one, and then another one, whenever I did watercolor, as you can see. So doing watercolor, it forced me to do more intricate and flimsy kind of lines. So they were smaller, and then also I did more robe type work, and just the overall character of it is different. Like this one is very like kind of lofty and ghost-like, while this guy is very much on the ground, grounded, uh, very in his element. Um, so that's something that you could also do, is just mess around with different styles. And I think that's really it. Uh, have we gone through some hopefully, if technology works with us, which it was not this today, but if it works next week, I'll be doing YouTube live version of this, and then you can catch the recording the following Thursday, which would be the 18th. And I think that one I'm going to be going over exposure, because in our community creation group we're also doing a Zoom meeting that talks about exposure and just how artists deal with it, what they say to a client whenever they want to pay them with exposure, and really just the abomination and atrocity that exposure is. So that's what we'll be talking about next week's podcast. But thank you for joining me. Remember to stay creative, and I'll catch you on the next Creative Block. Bye.